Hey everybody, welcome to week 3 of the 444 DFS MVP podcast. I'm John Breslin. You may know me as Squirrel Patrol. I'm joined by Davis Maddock, Pat Crane, Neil Orfield. How's everybody's week 2?
Pretty
Really
good.
week. Yeah.
Profitable.
I gotta
a rare thing in DFS.
I gotta call out Davis pointing out that he flag planted Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I had St. Brown in one of my, represented in my Lions Bears game stacks in my 150 set, finished 14th in the Million Maker, second in the slant. If I had taken that same 150 set and put it into the 555 Million Maker, I would have won a Million Maker. Of course, I also would have been out like $70-something thousand in entry fees. If I was doing that every week, I could potentially be down more than $1 million. But still, pretty good week. It was, feels good to have like a good main slate. But we are on to week 3, and we generally start talking about game environments first. And I'll say that I think it's a major decision point. We have one game that really stands out in terms of game environments. That's the Dallas-Chicago game. We just saw Dallas and the Giants involved in a shootout. Chicago defense hasn't looked spectacular. I believe they've got some injuries as well. So I guess we'll kind of start there, and Neil, will start with you as our point man on the game environments. But is that the game environment that you're looking to, or do you think is there a game environment you like more? And what do you think about the potential ownership in that game?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly one of the game environments that I'm looking to. Looks pretty good. Going to get some ownership, but not like out of hand right now. Dak Prescott projected for single-digit ownership as of right now. Caleb actually getting more ownership, at least where I'm looking right now. I think it's a fantastic game environment. Clearly, we've seen the Bears. I mean, as much as I love JJ McCarthy, he has been bad for most of his NFL career so far. He got absolutely crushed by the Falcons defense last week, and he looked really good for at least a little bit over a quarter of the game against the Bears. And then, of course, the Lions absolutely dominated them. I'm pretty high on Dallas in general. I think they're going to have a bad defense and a good offense. So, yeah, I think that is a game that I'm going to be attacking quite a bit. I might even play some of the running backs. We'll see about that part of it. As far as like full game environments, kind of intrigued by, I mean, the Vikings Bengals game is one that I'll have some attraction to. I do think the Vikings have a pretty good defense, so it's not like an ideal setup for who's starting for the Bengals. Browning for Jake Browning. But I do think it's a great spot for Carson Wentz to maybe revive the Vikings offense a little bit. So that's what I'll have some access to. One that stands out to me that is not really projected for a ton of ownership is the Falcons-Panthers game. I think that's one where, again, the Panthers defense looked pretty good against the Vikings. That might have just been JJ McCarthy not being NFL ready. But we know the Panthers defense has been bad for a while now. So that is one that I will lean into a bit. So I'll start with just those 3 off the top of my head.
Pat, what are your thoughts on the game environment?
Yeah, I tend to agree with what Neil said there. I mean, I think the big one, the really exciting one, is the Cowboys and the Bears. I think from the Bears side, writing up the walkthrough, I was like, the Ben Johnson stuff like doesn't really seem to be happening. They're not running play action. The quick passing game sucks, which is like they had a really efficient quick passing game, and then they would run play action on like almost half. If you look at Lions passes that were over 2.5 seconds last year, they're running play action on almost half of them. And they're not really even running that much play action on those longer throws. They're at 26% rate this year. It still feels kind of like the Caleb offense a little bit in a way that's frustrating, but that also might work against Dallas. Like we just saw with Russell Wilson, if you're kind of freelancing, like that can work here. And so I kind of like it from the Chicago side, but I also like it from the Dallas side because that defense just looks so bad, and digging into the individual players there, that ton of weak links in coverage. So that game could definitely be fun. There's a little bit like there's certain games this week that feel kind of like this is going to be when we find out like who someone really is. The Jaguars offensive line has been surprisingly impressive this year, but they go up against a Houston defensive line that I have like no doubts is elite. So you get like maybe the Jags are like actually able to hang a little bit, but probably not. And then you have like another game like that is the Cardinals and the 49ers, where the 49ers have been a little bit susceptible downfield. Their linebackers are really good in coverage, but if you look at the cornerbacks and safeties, there's potential for some big plays here if you can hold up in pass protection. And the Cardinals' offensive line has been pretty good, so maybe this is a spot where we could see Marvin Harrison come to life a little bit. He's someone that I like probably more than the projections would say, and I think Trey McBride is pretty interesting here. He'll be owned again, but I think still pretty interesting. So yeah, and I do like the Panthers game as well. Bijan Robinson, the cover boy. I think most likely he just gets absolutely fed here and crushes this defense. But on the other side, you do have a team that passed 80% of the time last week. So I think that's one of the big differences between the Panthers and the Vikings playing against the Falcons, is that the Panthers will kind of pass through the pain.
Yeah, and sorry, I just want to comment on the Arizona San Francisco game. I think that's an interesting game when you think about the flow of the slate. That I think that the Dallas Chicago game could see a lot of ownership. It's in the 4 p.m. window. San Francisco Arizona is also in the 4 p.m. window. So you have some late swap possibilities where if your chalk fails in the early window, maybe you're switching to Arizona San Francisco from Dallas Chicago or vice versa. Davis, what are your thoughts on the game environments?
I think that Carolina Atlanta game is actually going to be brutal. I think it's going to be like a lot of Algier, a lot of yelling at your TV. Like, Carolina, do you know you're down 2 scores? Like, are you aware you just had an 11 play 7-minute drive where you punted? You have 3 points, Dave. I think we
need this to be a segment because you did this very successfully last week. That actually it'll be brutal by Davis Maddox.
I'm happy to engage in a good game environment. Let me tell you, no person involved in Carolina Atlanta wants a good game environment. The Falcons coaching staff are happy to win this 17-10. And I think Dave Canales goes into every game saying, Bryce, let's just keep it close, man. Bryce, let's just please don't play so bad. I have no choice but to insert Andy Dalton into this game. I'm less into that game. I think there are 2 games that seem sneakily kind of fun. The Las Vegas Raiders against the Washington Commanders, 2 teams that kind of need a win here. We might already be in off the rails territory with the Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll Raiders, where we already have, why aren't you guys giving the ball to Gene T? What's going on with Bowers' knee? Why is Zamir White so involved?
They're 1-1. They're okay.
These things turn quickly in the National Football League. And then we've already got Jane Daniels through 8 quarters, whatever, has looked pretty mediocre, even in that win against the Giants. Now Mariota is starting this game. I wonder if we get a little bit of classic, 2 bad quarterbacks, but they're bad in a way that kind of is fun for fantasy football. That is one that I like there. I like Gene T way more than the market. I like Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt way more than the market. I like Debo way more than the market. And how about 2 teams that are lizard brains are dude, the Patriots always have a good defense. The Steelers always have a good defense. Then you look at what they put on the field for 2 weeks and you're like, these defenses stink. They can't get a hand on the quarterback. I do this show on Thursdays with Jacob, and we realize that it's actually a bad thing when you can name multiple defensive starters as a fantasy guy for a defense, because by the time fantasy guys like us know defensive players' names, they're already cooked. They're already on their 3rd contract.
TJ, so this is a TJ Watt
This is a TJ Watt, Jalen Ramsey, Hayward. You could name so many defensive starters.
Ramsey's actually been pretty good this year.
He has been, but basically the point, and Christian Gonzalez is probably not going to play. I don't have any real opinion on that, other than that all the ball knowers tell me that the Patriots are a mess without him. I think this is a super sneaky spot for Drake May. Super sneaky, Jaylen Warren. I was running Sims earlier, and I got him in a real low number of my top 150. But it's also a week where the high end guys project really, really well, like Bijan, CMC, CD. But it's kind of hard to get multiple of them in the same lineup because there's really only Keenan Allen in terms of below 5,000 projecting as a real value. So I like Warren there. But I think that New England-Pittsburgh game is pretty sneaky.
I like that call, obviously. I'm always happy to tout Drake May.
I thought about that one too, for the record. Yeah, I like it.
It's a community deprecating take that by the time the fantasy community knows, not so right, by the time the fantasy community knows a defensive player, he's cooked. So so he's a bad. We want to be going against the guys we think are good defensive players. I think the the Steelers gave up the Millie Maker week 1 quarterback, right? Justin Fields.
Maybe a corollary to that is I don't think we're not talking about Milton Williams a ton in fantasy, but he is a guy that looks really good. I think the Patriots defensive line is actually much better than it was last year. It was really bad last year, but that's the one thing they did kind of like beef up in free agency. It looks like they did that successfully. They have a decent pass rush. They're 9th in pass rush win rate, and they look really good in run defense, actually. So I don't hate the Warren call because I think he could get more work this week, but that's the bet to me, is that they feed him. I don't think it's a great matchup for Warren, but the secondary does stink, especially if Gonzalez is out. So the passing matchup for the Steelers, like, I kind of like, is DK Metcalf interesting this week? They might actually be able to attack downfield a little bit. Like there's maybe some life in the Steelers passing game that hasn't quite been there yet.
10.3 yards per pass so far this year for that Patriots defense, worst in the NFL.
Yep.
So
because I don't know any Patriots defensive players' names. So the theory,
I know the one, Christian Gonzalez.
I know the one. Yeah.
Milton Williams is good, man. He's having a good start to the year.
Yeah, famously one of the most.
Do you watch every
impactful
Patriots
players.
game, Pat?
I do the quad box with Red
Okay.
Zone. The Patriots is
sense.
almost always one of the games, just because I'm so obsessed with Drake May. Like I rooted against the Brady Patriots the entire way. I was a Raiders fan when they during the Tuck Rule game. So I absolutely despise that group of Patriots. But I threw away the fandom, and I don't root for laundry. So I'm back in. I'm in on the Drake May experience.
I like it.
So let's talk quarterbacks. The quarterback position for DFS. Pat, Drake May is only 5,300. Like that's pretty good pricing. Right? We're talking about that's $200 less than Jake Browning, which we went to thought was wrong last week. Is Drake May
Just
where you
rude.
think you're going? Is a kind of flag plan for quarterback or other players you like?
Well, I kind of want to get your thoughts on the group's thoughts on Marcus Mariota, because he opens. It's again, we have the 4,000, but he runs a little bit, so he's also pretty awful. But I don't know. Like, is he someone that's going to be in your player pool, because he's just so much cheaper than May?
I like Mariota a lot, actually. So I'm in the DC area, and actually I felt like Mariota. We've seen these highly drafted quarterbacks like float around in success after a few years in a different place so many times now. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the rushing production. Like he looked decent. He, I believe, started 2 games last year for Washington. One was in relief of Jaden Daniels, I think, early in the game. Or I don't know if he started the game, but he played the majority of the game against Carolina in Week 7, and then played the Week 18 game against Dallas. He put up 34 rushing yards and 56 rushing yards with a touchdown in those 2 games.
Yeah, he had 18 rushes and like really limited work last year, 4 passing touchdowns, and I think like 67 dropbacks or something.
Yeah,
because it feels a little bit like when you were heading into Week 1, and it's like, God, we could play anybody Week 1. No one knows anything. Let's double down on our summer takes, and it's like, all right, we're all playing Daniel Jones. It's like, what? Come on. And then of course that was the move. So it feels like a little like, oh, I really got to do it. Like there was a bunch of stuff I was excited about this week, but then Jaden Daniels is looking like a play, and then he's not going to play. And Mariota opens up, but I think going to him is probably pretty sharp at 4,000.
Yeah.
So I assume we like him better than Carson Wentz.
So this is what I was about to bring up.
I do.
It's like it's all well and good. It's all fun until 11% of your friends also show up with Marcus Mariota in your contest of choice, and then you're like, I just took Marcus Mariota in 2025 as the most owned quarterback of a slate. Why did I think that was a good decision? I'd be totally in on it if I didn't think it was going to be me holding hands with a bunch of my fellow SEALs. But that is so not the way it's trending. That is, if I had to bet right now, I bet he actually gets more owned than Caleb.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
I can't sign up for that, man.
Like,
I can't.
Current
I'll
ownership
play Carson
projections.
Wentz.
Current ownership projections not going to account for, because like some sites are not going to have him in yet. So like he'll have zero ownership. So yeah, I think ownership projections definitely going to come up. You're probably right. I still think I'll probably have some. To be honest,
I think I'm going to have some. Yeah. I didn't play Mac Jones last week, actually, but I think I'll play.
I did because I knew people like, oh, Mac Jones, he stinks. I'm not playing him.
Yeah.
Classic. People
I
like
think I'm gonna have
Mariota.
Mariota's going to be my number one quarterback.
All right, well, listen to
Washington's
John.
still
Don't listen to
three-point
me,
favorites
man.
at home.
Yeah, I mean, it's against the Raiders. Like, it's a pretty good setup.
Yeah, I'll say only 6,000 on FanDuel as well.
Yeah, looks good.
I think like another one of these matchups where it's like, okay, who are you really? Would be the Denver defense, which hasn't been as strong in pass coverage as we expected. The pass rush looks really good, but in coverage they're potentially like a little bit weaker than we were thinking. Cornerbacks are obviously good, but it's not like they're not like looking like shutdown guys right now. So I'm wondering if Justin Herbert is kind of a sneaky bet. We know that they're willing to pass a lot. They've had the lowest expected pass rate in the league. So this pass rate over expected stuff we're all excited about is great, but it's relative to the lowest pass rate that you would expect given their game script. What if they get pushed? What if it's a little bit more of a back and forth and this pass rate over expected stuff maybe doesn't keep up to this level, but they're firmly, a pass first, even pass heavy team relative to game script. This is maybe a little bit of an under the radar game environment. I think you have to bet against the Denver defense, but I don't know. They're a good defense. I don't know that they're one of these defenses we need to like completely
No,
avoid,
dude, they
though.
just let Dan Jones like march around the field.
Yeah.
Herbert is the gold star play. I mean, Herbert is the number one Charger. I mean, you covered it all. Top in PROE. All three of his wide receivers right now are showing as like positive value guys. I think Lad McConkey's like literally, isn't it the most obvious buy of all time? It's like it's been QJ and Keenan weeks the first 2 weeks. Oh, Keenan's the number one owned wide receiver of the week, and then Lad McConkey is like 11 for 112 and 1. I've never seen something so obvious before a game happened in my life.
What one note that jumped out from the walkthrough is that Quentin Johnson and Lad McConkey have seen a ton of double coverage this year, and the Broncos do double cover, so that they're still going to get defensive attention. But Keenan really hasn't. But when you like think about, okay, this matchup's going to be tougher than the typical matchups they've had, I'd rather bet on the guys who are still getting open despite facing double teams. So I think I'm most worried about. I think Keenan's role is kind of the most fragile, and then he's been able to get open against single coverage so far, and then the matchup gets tougher. Where I think Lad and Quentin Johnson. I mean, Quentin Johnson's been like way better than I would have thought. He like the underlying stuff is pretty good for him. So yeah, I like that you're in on Herbert. I think this is kind of a fun spot.
I'll actually add my concurrence. Chargers gave up the fewest points in the NFL per game last year. Broncos gave up the third fewest. That game, they're playing each other this week, in Los Angeles. Game has the second highest total on the slate, 46.5. Like, I think Herbert's a really interesting call because nobody's going to go there because there's no like breaking injury news or anything like that. But like, it's got the second highest. Like, Herbert's the favorite quarterback in the second highest point total game of the slate. And yeah, we're just not thinking because we're thinking like avoid Chargers, games, avoid like Denver defense.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, why not? Neil, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great call. It's one that, I looked at and I was like, I don't really want to play against that Denver defense, but you're right. It's certainly beatable. And Herbert is just so good. Like, I think that a mistake that I frequently make is overemphasizing matchups with bad defenses and underemphasizing game environments where it's just like two offenses that have the ability to go off. And I think these are two offenses that have the ability to put up points. So I think this is a call
college football
I
theorem.
get behind. Yeah.
Right. Like you have these two great college football teams, pick your teams of choice, whatever, Alabama, just whatever. But it's like they're just good football teams, and offenses always have a slight. And so that's why you get these crazy college football games between two really good teams, even though the defenses are really good.
Yeah. I think it's a good call.
And the pass rate over expected stuff, like the reason we care about that is because the expected part can balloon sometimes. So like Neil, to your point about these offenses pushing each other, like this is where a high PROE team is helpful because they might actually really lean into a back and forth script. And I mean, their pass rate's 65%. That's not that high. That's like middle of the row. That's 15th in the league. It's just that their expected pass rate is only 51%, which is extremely low. So, the next lowest is Green Bay at 54. I think the pass rate over expected stuff is pretty legit, and that they're 17% over expected on 1st and 10. which is they're clearly prioritizing the pass in those neutral situations. We know the run game hasn't taken off. This is like, it fits with the real world, what's happening. And then they're 14% overall, which is twice that of the Raiders and the Chiefs and the Giants, who are tied for second place. So yeah, this is a really interesting spot. Now, it's kind of like, are the Chargers really this team? Are the Broncos not as good as we were thinking on defense? Maybe we kind of flip the cards over and this game flops, but there's upside here if the Chargers really are this pass first team.
All right, let's talk running backs. Move on to the running back position. Davis, we'll start with you. You had said, you think the Carolina-Atlanta game is going to be abysmal. Bijan Robinson, running back cover boys in that game. What are your thoughts on the running back position?
Man, I'll tell you what, it's very hard to get super excited about Bijan when that fourth quarter, that's not his quarter. Like, obviously, he's going to project for a ton of points, and he's a really good receiver. But the Falcons clearly like Algier in this like body blows style role closer, Mariano Rivera on the Atlanta Falcons. And perhaps more concerningly, they actually brought him back in last week to score a touchdown. So, like, he starts the drive, he gets a first down, he goes to go take his rest, and then Bijan is in for the next couple plays. And then when they get down to the goal line, they actually brought Algier back in. I mean, I basically am going to just keep playing CMC until he's out for the rest of the season, which is probably coming sooner rather than later because they just gave him like 28 touches again.
His rushing efficiency is absurdly bad.
It's not going to, it basically, Corain, as you and I have realized, it just does not matter. The way they use it
honestly does not matter with this workload. It does. It could get worse. I'd still play him.
There's still room for it to get worse. Obviously, Jordan Mason projects so well at his salary that I would have to be playing like insanely large fields that I don't play to consider. Like, I'd have to be doing like Millie Maker, like lottery style stuff to be like, I'm not interested. Like in the Spy, if he gets 18 rushes, 64 yards, 1 catch for 4 yards, he's going to be so owned that he's still probably in the winning lineup. So I probably am just going to play him.
What do you think 2019 Davis and Pat would have thought about this Mason ownership? I think we would have been gleeful.
Immediate
Yeah.
fade. We'd be like, dude, I kind of talking myself into Xavier Scott. He's a converted wide receiver. And I will do my favorite play of the week that everyone is going to roll their eyes and groan at is Ashton GT. I just there's no world where this dude should be $6,700. And people are just not interested. Like everything that I believed about GT 2 weeks ago, I still believe now. I actually saw this great cut up of like him getting a 2-yard run against the Chargers. And it was like the most insane effort to get 2 yards of all time. All he needs is just like a defense to not totally be on their game. And we're talking about a huge explosion.
I thought for sure you were going to go to Quinshon Judkins when you said I roll play of the week.
Can't quite get there. That's a Neil play.
Yeah,
against the Packers.
Thoughts on running back, Neil. And we got a question in the chat. Walker or Mason if Charbonnet's out?
Mason.
Ooh, that's close. I think like Walker's playing the Saints. So I think that's a pretty close one.
I think that's pretty close too.
Mason's playing the Bengals.
Yeah, true. They're both would be
both become awesome.
I want to play both.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's pretty close there. Kenneth Walker is actually somebody that I'm interested in playing regardless in large field tournaments. Again, playing the Saints, he's projected for about 8% ownership currently with Charbonnet in. Obviously, if Charbonnet's out, like he's still a great play, but for different reasons, he's just going to project really well. But with Charbonnet in, Kenneth Walker just clearly showed us last week he has the ability to just put up huge scores just based on talent. So I do like Kenneth Walker a bit. Chase Brown, I think, is pretty interesting. He's 6,900, so a little bit expensive. And again, I'm playing the largest field tournament, so I need to mention that I'm like not throwing out just the best projected plays, the best point per dollar plays, just kind of plays that stand out to me that I think are going a little bit under owned currently in large field tournaments. So Chase Brown, the Vikings have actually been kind of susceptible on the ground so far this year, giving up 5.2 yards per carry. I think they're just kind of worn out because they have been on the field way too much, but I think that could continue this week. So 6,900 with his workload, I think Chase Brown is pretty good. I think Jonathan Taylor is just kind of obvious. So I guess there is one that is sort of obvious play in what I thought was going to be a tough matchup with the Titans, but they're giving up 5.4 yards per carry so far this season on the ground. So it's not maybe as tough as I had thought it was. Similarly, in that same game, Tony Pollard, the workload has been there. He's just not quite getting home. But I think given his workload against this Colts defense, which is also giving up 5.4 yards per carry, Tony Pollard stands out to me as a not super low own play. He's going to get ownership in the teens, but I think at 5,700, he's just.
I know. I bet it'll end up being lower than that. He's hard to click on. It's really you start doing. You're like, man, is this guy ever going to score a touchdown?
Well, if we get Walker, no one's playing Pollard.
Right. Yeah, true. Yeah. If we get Walker and Mason in the same price range, pretty tough to play Pollard. But he's still getting, like, if Tyjae Spears had played the first 2 weeks and this is the first week Tyjae Spears was out, do you think he'd be playing? I kind of think the ownership would be similar. If this was the first week Tyjae Spears is out, I think Pollard has just struggled in 2 really tough matchups. So we haven't seen it yet. Now people are kind of bored by it.
The other thing is that, like, he hasn't struggled that badly when you look at how bad Cam Ward has been. You know, and I know Cam Ward has believers from, you know, the traits and stuff, which is good, you know, if we're betting on his running back. But, like, statistically, Cam Ward has been disastrous through 2 weeks. So I'm impressed that Pollard hasn't been, you know. He hasn't been great, but, you know, he's attached to a pretty rough passing game right now. Yeah,
I like that. I like that shout out. I'll throw out one more name just because I need to throw out one that Davis is going to mock me for. Tyler Algier, I actually think is like the great leverage play on Bijan or Bijan. You can pronounce it either way, by the way, these days. He's okay with both. Tyler Algier, that is a Neil last play. Tyler Algier against Carolina to me is a strong play, a little ownership.
Pat, I'll go to you for running backs. Any thoughts on the running backs in this high total game, like Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift? Is that a place you consider, or do you have other running backs in mind?
Yeah, I think so. Javonte Williams has, like, he's been pretty good. Like, if you look at the numbers, it's only 2 games, and he was awful last year, so it's hard. You know, is this just he got loose a couple times? But I do think he's, like, his success rate is good, and they trust him in short yardage, and he has total control of the backfield. So, you know, it's a way to kind of bet on this game environment, you know, without having to figure out exactly where the targets are going to go, which after week 1, I was like, oh man, CeeDee Lamb alpha. But last week, Jake Ferguson was kind of the number 1 there as they were getting the ball out a little quicker and more shallowly. I think this could be a George Pickens game. So it's like, it's not super spread out in the Dallas passing game, but it's not, you know, it could be that the touchdowns flow through Javonte Williams there. And I don't know, maybe he has a little bit more left in the tank than I thought. I think he's viable. DeAndre Swift, I mean, they played more Kyle Monangai last week, and Swift, dude, he's such a bad runner. Like,
he's got 2 missed tackles forced through 2 games.
He's such a bad runner. Like, he turns me into, like, the boomer football guy where it's like, oh, run between the tackles, you know, like, you
just let someone try and tackle you and just say no. It's so bad.
But here's the thing, right? The one thing you like about DeAndre Swift, he's a 13% target share, and this is a game where they could just need to throw a bunch. And so I think the game environment could actually be, like, okay for Swift. He's probably most vulnerable if they're able to, like, establish it, because that's probably not his job pretty soon. But I don't know, like, he's already losing work to a 7th round rookie. I probably don't end up playing him, but I could see why you might. Breece Hall is the guy that I want to shout out before we move on. I mean, Hall, he obviously had the incredible week 1, not so great last week as the Jets absolutely collapsed. But Braylon Allen really didn't play much last week. And so, like, if you look at the numbers, Breece Hall's his control of the backfield doesn't look so great. But Isaiah Davis is playing in this, like, garbage time role. We don't really get any Allen. And, you know, Justin Fields was running around and stealing carries that way. But, you know, Tyrod Taylor maybe dumps underneath a little bit to him more, maybe is executing the offense a little bit more. And this is a game where, you know, they could be trailing. They could need to incorporate him as a pass catcher, which they have done. And he's been extremely efficient as a receiver this year. And yeah, Isaiah Davis is going to steal 3rd downs and stuff, but they're throwing to Breece Hall on early downs. They don't have any playmakers other than Hall and Garrett Wilson. So I think he's he's definitely interesting, and maybe really gets, especially if we get Walker, right? He gets lost in the shuffle. He's 6,000. He's more expensive by a couple hundred than Walker, but I think he's flashing the rushing efficiency again. He's got a 52% success rate, which is RB7. He's breaking away and 2.14 yards per route run this year. So just kind of a bet on talent and maybe Tyrod Taylor like facilitating enough. I mean, this guy's produced with some awful quarterbacks. He can get there with Taylor.
I think that he's going to go totally overlooked. Like that price range is going to go totally overlooked because people are going to be dropping down to Mason and Walker, or they're going to be spending up for Bijan or Christian McCaffrey. I think the mid range in running backs is going to be overlooked. I've been recommending some Garrett Wilson, and I felt a little bit hesitant with Tyrod Taylor, under center. So like Breece Hall is a really more interesting call. Because I agree. Like, what if he's dumping it off more? But yeah, and I guess any other thoughts on running backs?
You want to? I'll give one. I'll give one that's going to make another groaner. How about ETN Jr.? It's just like we're all.
Oh wait.
We're excited about Tootin. Tootin had a 22% snap share last week. Like it's all like Tootin's way better, and this is not going to be the snap share for the entirety of the year, and they know that, and I think Travis probably knows that, but ETN is like just giga leverage, 2%, 3%, 4%.
Oh, you're talking about ETN himself. I was confused when
Yes.
you said ETN Jr. Are you talking about Bashal Tootin? You're talking about Trevor ETN? Oh, okay.
No, that's his name.
He is a junior. I didn't realize that. Okay.
His name's literally Travis Etienne Jr.
Yeah. Now I get it.
Yeah. I think I'll probably work him in the flex. And
you said, Davis, you're interested in JCM. He's 5,500. Are you?
That's more of an underdog draft games play because
Okay.
like legit, like in the main battle royale, there might be like 100 teams that take him, 15 of them being me. So and on FanDuel too as well, half PPR obviously.
One other guy at running back would be Bucky Irving, who is probably getting a little bit too much ownership right now. But if we get Walker and people kind of change up their builds, him at 7,100, I could see him getting cut out of builds pretty quickly. Like you're either going up for, I mean, why wouldn't you just play Taylor, if you've got that salary? And then obviously you want to get up to McCaffrey. So Bijan, he's definitely like a boom bust type of play, probably more large field, but their tackles are both going to be out this week, which isn't great, but I could see them like leaning on Bucky here as opposed to wanting to drop back a bunch in this game. And the Jets, like if you tell them like, hey, let's just like both run half the time, the Jets are going to be super psyched about that. They're not pushing you off that. So I could see this being like a little bit of a Bucky breakout game in an unlikely spot with the injuries to the offensive line, but just because of the game environment.
I like it. Can we actually go back to JCM for just a minute?
Yeah.
Because with Eckler being out, I'm sort of wondering, is there a possibility that he picks up some of that passing game work for those of you who watch college football? Because they, like, the coaches have talked about it, like it's important. Like that was something that they talked about in the offseason. It's important that we have running backs who can catch passes. And then of course it was Eckler has that role clearly. But I wonder if Eckler is harder to supplant than McNichols. Could JCM?
No one would really know unless they were watching New Mexico State football. Like Ja'Cory Carson-Merritt played one real college football game.
I am pulling up his profile from 2024. He didn't really play as a receiver at all. It's almost like he didn't play football. Yeah, no, we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't fully.
Yeah.
Know.
So maybe
maybe
is the answer.
Their plan is for McWeapon to do it.
Right. I think that's right.
Yeah. That's probably right.
But part of the fun of JCM is like, we don't know. We don't know what he can
we just don't know.
If Austin Eckler had gotten injured on Monday instead of Thursday, would people be talking about JCM much more, saying like, oh, he's a backup? Like we'd be lumping him in with Jordan Mason, right? Like
if he wouldn't have
got injured.
Well, if he wouldn't have gotten 4 rushes for 17 yards and then immediately subbed out in a game they were getting drubbed, yeah. He's
also radicalized like half the field already from the best ball stuff, and like he's already had his moment. They traded Brian Robinson, right? So you're like, oh my god, like he's the dude now, and then he has a 33% snap share in week 1, 22% in week 2. So I feel like some people are already burned, and some people are already like very anti this running back. Where 5 years ago they never would have heard of him by this point. So, yeah. I don't know.
Radicalization of young men against the Washington Commanders.
Continues.
Backfield, one of the biggest stories in America.
Yeah.
One of
That's
Neil
what
and
I'm
I's Neil and I speak to basically the biggest, like he's like the Antifa of JCM. He told me, this is actually true. Adam Scher told me that he had a dream about Chris Rodriguez scoring 2 touchdowns.
He posted about it on Twitter. He posted about that dream on Twitter today.
Touch grass.
Yeah. It's funny because he'll mock us for like being too into best ball and like, oh, we spend so much time thinking about it, and then he's dreaming about it.
He's dreaming about Chris Rodriguez touchdowns. And guess what, buddy? That's the only place they're happening in your dreams.
Yeah, exactly.
I have so much Chris Rodriguez in best ball.
I actually have.
I actually do too. And I blame Adam for that, by the way.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it.
All right.
JCM, though.
Let's move on to now that we've talked over JCM, we'll move on to the wideouts. Davis, I'm actually going to start with you again after the Amon-Ra St. Brown call, the flag plant last week. What do you have for us at wide receiver this week?
I don't have anything near as good. Like the only off the board, like one-off that I really like is Garrett Wilson, kind of related to Karane's Breece Hall call. This is going to be like a kind of a sloggish style game, but something that you don't forget about Justin Fields that we forgot after week 1, after he won everyone $1 million on both sites, was he's like real up and down as a passer.
You don't say.
Tyrod, not up and down as a passer, because he just is like the most like 6.8 YPA. You know exactly what you're getting of all time. But the Jets are still going to run this ridiculously condensed offense, like probably the most condensed in the NFL. The Rams look at that and go, is there like anyone else you want to give the ball to? Like,
well, so Josh Reynolds has been hurt. It doesn't help either.
We could like legit see we could have like an 11 reception game for Garrett Wilson Jr. here. I think the most interesting thing from a strategy perspective, like the chalk is super clear. Keenan Allen, super owned. JSN, super owned. Jacoby Myers, super owned. Roma Dunze, like giga mega 25-30% style ownership on him. I think the interesting thing to try and reason for yourself is how bad are Jake Browning and Carson Wentz relative to what we've or is Carson Wentz better than Justin Jefferson? I've been working on this operation.
Than Justin Jefferson.
Sorry, than JJ McCarthy.
I know what you meant.
I've been working on this idea, and I'll toss it back to you guys on this one. KOC owes like some kind of duty of responsibility to JJ McCarthy's development in these games, that he can't just be like, okay, well, we're down, so we're going to have you drop back 97 times and just like whatever. Like, I kind of need to both try and win these games, but also not David Carr you and just put you in a bad spot mentally. He owes Carson Wentz nothing. He's just like, you're Nick Mullins, you're Josh Dobbs. Also, KOC is like one of the more thoughtful NFL coaches on the role of a backup quarterback. He's done this with multiple guys where he's brought them in as backups and then got them contracts, like really made them a part of the team, really prioritized their development. He did it with Daniel Jones, right? So maybe Carson Wentz has had like more time with the starters than the average backup quarterback. All this is to say, I like Carson Wentz at 2% owned a lot more than I like Mariota at 14%. And if Justin Jefferson is Justin Jefferson and he's 7,500 and he's 8% owned, we're all going to feel pretty dumb, I think, for not being in on that. So curious your guys' thoughts.
Neil,
100%.
You're a Minnesota fan, right?
I'm a Minnesota fan, and I 100% agree with the take and the reasoning. Like, I do think, like, you just watch those games. He was like taking care of JJ McCarthy with kid gloves. Like, he was like, we're not going to let you just like go out there and play wild. We're going to play a really conservative game plan. And it was boring and it didn't work. And like, the only time that we ever got to see him really let loose was when they were down a bunch of scores in the late third, early fourth quarter, where JJ McCarthy finally excelled and like played up tempo a little bit. Of course, he also sucked playing up tempo against the Falcons. So I guess he did do a little bit later in that Falcons game. But yeah, I think Carson Wentz is just like, he's a veteran quarterback. You can just let him roll out there. I wouldn't be surprised if they attack a little bit more with Carson Wentz. Justin Jefferson, definitely a name that I was going to bring up. And I like the call that, like, yeah, Carson Wentz is also playable at 4,000 against this Bengals defense. Like, we haven't really talked about him, but he's going to go under owned also. And Jaden McCarthy, Justin Jefferson currently projected for ownership in the teens, but wouldn't be that shocking if that comes down a little bit. But I think it's a fine play, even in like mid-teens ownership.
I like the point about the backup quarterback coming in. And I think like we've actually seen this with Bryce Young, where like once they kind of gave up on him being like a true franchise guy, we're just like, please don't get me fired, Bryce. Like, it's been way more fun because they just let him chuck it and don't care about his development. Yeah, I mean they're just gonna let Carson Wentz chuck it if they need to let him chuck it. One worry would be that they don't need to do that. Because like if Burrow was on the other side of this game, I would be way more interested. But I mean, you could see them just kind of controlling it with Mason and using, like, they don't want to feature Carson Wentz. That seems like a bad time.
Yeah, true.
Devontae Adams, I'll throw out is like there's like a number of game environments where I'm not super psyched about the entire environment, but I feel like good wide receivers are in decent enough spots where, you know, we're going to see drives get killed, and particularly like against some of these pass rushes, like with the Rams. I think they could have trouble. Their offensive line looks like a problem, and they could have issues protecting Stafford this week. But you look at Adams' profile, it's like, I mean, it's wild. He has a 34% target share, 33% targets per out run, 28% first read target rate, which is 99th percentile, and 2.62 yards per out run. So he's like really popping, is still Devontae Adams. It's just that Nakua is like ahead of him at everything. Nakua is at a 34% target share, which matches him, but his per route stuff's even better. 39% targets per out run, 35% first read target rate, which is the highest in the league. And then he's at 4.33 yards per route run. So Adams is like second fiddle, but on any other team, we'd be like, oh my God, like they're featuring Devontae Adams. So I think this is, and last week was actually the week where Adams got more run, or more targets, I should say. So I don't know. I mean, this could be a Puka game again. They could be looking to get the ball out quickly. Puka's playing a lot more in the slot, but I think both those Rams receivers are pretty interesting, more as one-offs. I think Brian Thomas is pretty interesting as a one-off. Again, it's kind of like, I don't really trust the Jaguars to hold up against this defensive line consistently, but I think there could be opportunities downfield against this Texans defense. I think the Thomas role has been really good. His yards per target has been insanely bad, like cannot sustain bad. It currently is at 3.3, which is 6.4 yards lower per target than you'd expect. He's got a 14.2 ADOT. So, you know, you'd expect him to be like 9-10 yards per target, and he's just not producing and not on the same page with Lawrence. But that's the type of thing where it's like it gets right, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, this dude has a 26% target share and is one of the most talented young wide receivers in the league. It's not a great matchup, but I think he could pop here as kind of a one-off play.
Anybody have any interest in a guy on the opposite side of that game, in Nico Collins?
I was just about to bring him up. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's high on him. Yeah, Neil.
No, I'm out. I'm out.
Why is that?
I'm selling any Houston Texans related stock. I counted watching 3 plays for the Texans on third down last week where every Tampa Bay Buccaneers pass rusher beat their man. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneer pass blockers were the Texans pass blockers were here, and the rushers were here, and CJ Stroud was just in a sea of Tampa Bay Buccaneers pass rushers with no one protecting him. It just doesn't feel like the way it's supposed to go.
Jags pass rush has been good this year too. I think their defense we thought was one to target and might not be.
Yeah, I think that is fair. That's like looking at the numbers. I thought, like you said, it was going to be a great spot, and it does not look as good as expected. I saw a notification about BTJ, and I thought this is timely, just that he's going to play, which I think we were expecting.
Yep.
We spend some time just going over the Cowboys Bears like receiving threats, like cost, ownership, projection considered. like kind of ranking or thinking through like CD Lamb, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, and George Pickens?
Yeah. So I think like factoring in ownership, it's probably going to be the ones that other people don't want to play. Like George Pickens, probably number one for me. I think it's a great spot against Chicago. He is only 5,900. He's out there. He's getting targeted some. It's a great spot. So just because he is the lowest owned, I think it is George Pickens for me, number one. I want to say DJ Moore. This is a spot that Derek Brown pointed out to me that DJ Moore has always just eaten against single high, and Dallas is playing a ton of single high so far this year. I believe that was the reason. It was a matchup based. Like, this is just a great spot for DJ Moore. I kind of thought that he was also going to be super contrarian while Rome was going to get all the ownership, because everybody like Rome looks like he's taking over. That really is not how it's projecting. So I don't love it as much as I would if DJ Moore was getting like zero ownership, but I still think a fairly strong play. And then obviously like CD projects the best of the group. He is the most expensive. He's going to get some ownership. I think he's still a great play. And Rome is the one that, he's priced probably too cheap for the role that he has currently. But still, like, I like all of them to be clear, but Rome is getting the most ownership of the group, which is really the only reason that I'm listing him last year. So for large field tournaments, that would be my ranking. Obviously not for like cash games.
I think I still like Rome the most. It's just 5,300. He looks like the number one there. Like the Ben Johnson stuff about we'll see who wants to practice hard this week, the effort and everything. And then they had the quote that went viral about them not having practice habits that are championship caliber or whatever. Like, I mean, DJ Moore's the one that they had to talk to, hey, remember when you quit on the team last year? Please don't do that again. And they're already basically saying, didn't specifically call out Moore, but clearly meant more.
It's probably more,
yeah. So, I mean, Rome Odunze just went off, and he's like the other full-time receiver there. So I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous about. You would have to give me more at really low ownership. He would have to be a big leverage play off of Rome Odunze. He probably, he's going to be less owned, but I don't know that it'll be like a massive difference. So I like Rome there. I like the Pickens call a lot. It's definitely like a leap of faith type of play. The target numbers don't really back it up, but it's week 3. Like he's a good receiver. We only have 2 weeks. And this is a spot where I think you can attack downfield. The Bears pass rush sucks. It really sucks. And their secondary also sucks. So like, if you want to attack, you look at what Dak did last week, they're getting the ball out to Jake Ferguson, who had like a 6-8 odd or whatever in that range. And they're just like feeding him. And then they have Kevontae Turpin coming in. He only ran like 30-something% of the routes, but they're giving him these quick hitting, yak type of plays. He's almost like a satellite back type of dude. And it's just like, the Giants defensive line is really good. Let's get the ball out quickly here and a little bit more underneath. And then, Lamb does have a pretty productive game. Pickens is involved, but they weren't just like free to sit back and attack downfield. I think they might be this week, which makes Pickens, this could be like a big time breakout game for him. You got to trust the profile a little bit from last year compared to this year, but I think it makes sense to do that.
Just want to shout out the B52s reference in the chat, and then move on to Davis for any thoughts on the those Bears Cowboys receivers.
Yeah, I'll be the one to say that DJ Moore is still probably a good football player, and that it's just sure maybe he doesn't practice very much, maybe he quits on his routes or whatever.
Maybe he quits a bunch of times every year.
What are they going to do, man? They're going to bench him for Luther Burden?
He's still 95% route participation last week.
Yeah,
even
I use benching for Luther Burden.
Look, man, I'm happy to welcome in the age.
That's just wish casting.
But DJ Moore, DJ Moore is going to have the easiest, most annoying 6 for 92 in one game here. It's just like it's so predestined. It doesn't even make me particularly happy, but it just is like. It's just going to happen, man. You think Rome Odunze is not going to reward all these people who didn't play him last week and then are jamming him in now? Like, this is not really the way DFS works. You don't get to fade the guy at 5% and then jam him in at 20% and just be like, all right, send me my money, please. Like,
he doesn't know his DraftKings ownership though, right? Like, he's not necessarily factoring that into his routes.
So actually, man, there's this really interesting study, and I'm forgetting who did it, but they did a correlation between like projected fantasy points and salaries and ownership and everything. And one of the thing they found was that DraftKings salaries actually kind of create their own buy low windows in which players who play a lot and see their teammates or wide receivers see their teammates' prices rise, those guys end up in these spots where they end up scoring a ton of fantasy points because their teammates' prices keep rising, which just means contextually things are getting better for their teammates. But if a guy's playing a lot, their salary never like decreases too much. I remember the best example of this is there was a multiple like Christian Kirk weeks where this happened, where Christian Kirk's teammates, their prices would go way up, and then all of a sudden Christian Kirk pops. Jamison Crowder, another one of these guys.
You're the quiet player on a good offense.
Yeah.
Quiet player on a good offense. Yeah.
They still need to get paid, right? So they still need, like, when their teammates start getting all the targets, they need to say something to the quarterback. Is that?
But what about when a guy he's the teammate who just went off and then his price doesn't rise? That seems like maybe a spot.
That's the Roman Doomsday.
That's the Roman.
Right. Look, I'm not saying Rome is bad, but like you're gonna pop in your is Caleb Williams Roma Dunze going to be the first, the second, the third most combinatorially owned pairing in the contest this weekend? I would guess first or second.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, first or second.
Whereas Caleb Moore is like, it's just me. It's just no one else wants to do it. Yeah, and Neil. Yeah, no one wants to be on record as like, okay, this pouting guy who like keeps whining. That's the guy I want to play. I got a stat for you that Reeves just gave me, which is that when these players have been on the field together, Rome and DJ Moore against cover 2 defenses leads in targets by like a bazillion percent, for whatever that's worth.
Hmm.
All right, let's move on to the tight end position.
Wait.
Neil,
could I just throw out a few wide receivers? So some that I like, obviously Drake London. I like that matchup. I know it might just be a running game thing, but I kind of like the Falcons receivers. Drake London gonna get some ownership, but then Darnell Mooney getting like 0 ownership.
Yeah.
Speaking of players who have been quiet in maybe a good offense in a great matchup, he's down to 4,500 projected for like 0 ownership. Darnell Mooney clearly has the ability to just break the slate. So Darnell Mooney is one that really stands out to me. Need to get that name out. And then I just want to say JSN. I think Scott Barrett, my friend, has been referring to him as Mini Puka, and just like the usage is just so good for JSN. He's 6,500, so the price has come up and maybe looks too expensive, but he might just be like an $8,000 player, and he's just too cheap in a great matchup here. So I think JSN, another player who was getting some ownership, but just needed to throw that name out. Sorry, just needed to make sure I got a few of my receivers in there.
I like the Mooney call a lot.
Yeah, like zero ownership there.
Yeah, we probably didn't talk about JSN enough either. I think he's going to be chalky, but the Puka and JSN comparison, they're statistically, in terms of like receptions and receiving yards, like fairly identical so far this season. But in terms of like, I think they're second and third in receiving yards, or second and fourth in receiving yards, and I think like first and third in receptions.
Yeah,
Puka and JSN.
Yep.
But yes, now we will move on to the tight end position and go back to Neil. Something I'll throw out just to get us started. It looks like Tucker Kraft did not practice again, so we may have Luke Musgrave week, or is it still Harold Fanning, or are we going back to Trey McBride?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Luke Musgrave, it's still not a great matchup with the Browns, but if Tucker Kraft is out, he's going to look like a pretty strong value. It's also, Trey McBride is always going to be pretty good, like a pretty clear, like top tier tight end options. Brock Bowers there also. I think you can always pay up. I don't think we need to talk about them much. I think it's just they're going to get some ownership. They project pretty well, but there are other tight ends that I find interesting at lower ownership. Actually, Tyler Warren he's still only 4,400 for some reason, and I think the usage is good enough that he's a little bit too cheap. So probably Tyler Warren, somebody I'll play a little bit of. Jake Ferguson again in that matchup with Chicago looks pretty good. Jawan Johnson, probably the price not reflecting his current role as much. Actually, TJ Hawkinson is one that I think he's done nothing so far, but now he's got Carson Wentz, maybe a little bit better at getting him the ball in a great matchup with the Bengals, who have been just a terrible defense against tight ends for as long as I've been alive. I think the Bengals have just been terrible against tight ends. So I think this is the spot for TJ Hawkinson. So those are some that kind of stand. I kind of want to say I'll say it. Kyle Pitts, I think, is the current ownership projections in general, not reflecting who Kyle Pitts is this year. I think he's actually pretty good this year. And of course, I'm attacking that Carolina defense quite a bit, but I think Kyle Pitts is going to be a more expensive player just based on how he looks. He looks a lot better to me than he has in years past, and I think the stats are going to reflect that. And it's a strong matchup at a relatively low price tag, so like doesn't stand out his salary relative to other tight ends, but I actually think he's it's a pretty good salary for him.
Give me Mooney and Pitts.
I do, yeah. I mean, give me the Falcons passing game.
All right, Pat, thoughts on tight end?
You're seeing more of Pitts too. He's got 87% route participation this year, which is 94th percentile. Juwan Jennings, second in route participation this season, after being kind of a part-time player this year. So I like that call a lot. I do think Harold Fannin is as viable. He's not going to have the routes of those guys, but this is a matchup where, like, I mean, part of the problem with Harold Fannin is that I think the Packers just obliterate the Browns here, but they have to get the ball out quickly when they pass, and Fannin, I think, will probably be a decent part of that game plan. Some scheme stuff, just quick hitting stuff, moving him around the formation and all that. I think that kind of covers. There's no one really jumping out as like a super under the radar play to me. I like the Warren call a lot. McBride, I mean, I would like McBride more, I think, if Purdy were to play. These teams, like, it's one of these matchups where, like, this could be fun, but it probably won't be fun. And with Mac Jones, it's probably not going to be fun. So, yeah, it's not a particularly exciting week at tight end. That about does it.
Davis, any thoughts on tight end? And then we'll do pleasant thoughts.
Luke Musgrave is like actually like a crazy value. Like I
2,700, yeah.
He's gonna like immediately walk into 80% routes. Now that might be 18 routes the way that the Green Bay Packers play. But like people, normally when people do, the people forget bit, no one actually forgets, but people do forget that Luke Musgrave started over Tucker Kraft for the entirety of their rookie season. They think that Luke Musgrave can play. They're happy to call Tucker Kraft plays for Luke Musgrave. And
what are you going to do in cash? Like it's all just, it's like Luke Musgrave, two running backs in the below 6,000. Mariota.
So I probably am not playing. I'm probably not. Well, you play CeeDee. You play Bijan, you play McCaffrey, and that's a lot tighter than you think.
Okay.
It always feels that way in cash, and you're like, dude, I can play anyone I want, and then you look up and you're like, dude, I need $200 to get to JSN, and I can't find it. It's always how it goes. The planning, Harold Fannin. I mean, should be if we're
the Harold Fannin bet. The Harold Fannin
bet. We're definitely getting 51 dropbacks from Joe Flacco in this game. The question is, like, does 51 dropbacks lead to 8 sacks and 17 completions? I don't know.
This is a real how it started, how it's going type of game where they're going to come in with like Quinshon Judkins, like, we're going to pound the rock, and then by the fourth quarter, it's just be like, oh god, we're so far behind. Just chucking it.
and another thing, so this is actually something you have to think about with Browns players. They're gonna wave the white flag in the fourth quarter. So some teams don't wave the white flag and they keep their starters in. Browns, it's week 2, and we already see they're like, yeah, sure, Gabriel, Jamari Thrash, do whatever you want. So you do have to adjust your projections for that a little bit when they're huge dogs. Like,
where does Fannin fall on that? Does that help him or hurt him?
No, that hurts him. Yeah,
he's
not out there with
they're already protecting him.
They're already protecting him.
But they're not doing like total line changes, right? Like I would. I mean, I guess like snap counts would tell the story, but I would expect.
No, they did. So the only reason Samson got a touchdown last week was because he was barely involved the whole time, and then he came out with the line change. Like, it was like literally like Dylan Gabriel, Jamari Thrash, Isaiah Bond, Dylan Sams. I don't know if they played backup offensive linemen, probably not, but they did do full on, like, last 2 drives were reserves. Oh, all and right. Tyler Warren. How about Tyler Warren? Leads
Yeah,
all
Neil.
Yeah,
said him,
I
yeah.
just wanted to reiterate. Leads
Yeah.
all tight ends and first read target share.
Yeah, I wish I had played him in best ball.
He's really good, guys.
Yeah,
he's really good.
Seems really good.
All right. Any closing thoughts? Anybody have to say something? Get a player out there? Anything?
No, I already interrupted you to get my players out.
Yep. All right. That'll do it for week 3 of the DFS MVP podcast. Good luck to everybody this weekend, and we will see you next week.